Okay, so having been through the various meetings, I'm going to reconvene the special council meeting. Motion on the minutes. All those in favor, opposed, carried. We have a motion resolving the committee of the whole to hear delegations on items on the agenda. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Anybody here who wants to delegate on an item that is on the agenda for this open meeting? Anyone? We have a motion to rise and report. Sorry? Oh, are you? Yeah. Just a minute.
Yeah, he is.
Was he registered for this meeting? Yeah, you were actually registered for Public Works, so come on forward.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. TransLink collect property taxes in Richmond and Metro Vancouver and then return some money to municipalities. This is a double taxation as Richmond also collect property taxes and use them for various transportation projects. TransLink does not distribute their grants on per capita basis and there is no appeal process. The BC government has many grants program on transportation project, but they do not collect any property taxes from Richmond. We need an overall list of all projects and we should advocate for all of them regardless of who is responsible for them. Like the BC Injury Research and Prevention Unit has a deadline of January 15, 2024 to apply for grants. And as far as I know, the city of Richmond has not applied in previous years. Most of their grants are Vision Zero projects, but they also approve bus shelters. And TransLink is the only transit system in BC and possibly in Canada that does not fund bus shelters. In 2023, BC Transit was able to cost share over 500 bus shelters. We have 800 bus stops or so in Richmond, and we don't have proper sidewalk, landing area, and lighting at many of these bus stops. And under the present slow process, it could take another 15 or 20 years to improve all bus stops. I mean, we should have at least a bench at every bus stop, and if there is a room, should be a shelter. And there is no cost for these street furnitures as they are provided by an advertising company. But Richmond should follow Burnaby that collects up to $1 million per year in advertising revenue as they bought the shelters from the advertising company. The bus speed and reliability program is 100% funded by TransLink. In 2023, TransLink budgeted $8 million for this important program, but only $3.5 million was spent. Many municipalities do not understand how to prioritize our bus system. We need way more transit priority signals in Toronto, which is the same population as Metro Vancouver, 2.8 million. There are around 400 transit priority signals, while in Metro Vancouver there's only about 10, and 3 of them are in Richmond. But many more intersections in Richmond need transit priority signals. In addition to studying the Garden City corridor, we should study all bus corridors in Richmond. We need to copy from Human Transit, Jared Walker, and redesign the basic local bus network that has not changed since the mid-1970s. I mean, buses carry at least 75% of the riders in Richmond. So these are my comments about the grants program. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Okay, may I have a motion to rise and report? All those in favor, opposed, carried. Brings us to the resolutions from the General Purposes Committee of the Sidewalk Snow Removal Housekeeping Amendments that we moved and seconded. Discussion on that. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Amendments for the building regulations. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Then we come to homelessness in Richmond. I know Councillor Heed has some comments, but let's ask staff. We have your report, and you've recommended we receive it for information. Do you have anything further to add or comment on in the?
Nothing to add, Your Worship.
Okay. All right. So it's so far. So Councillor Heed will come to you right after moving it to receive it for information. Okay. So the motion on the floor is to receive it for information. Okay. And then we're going to go to Councillor Heed. Anything? I see a couple hands, but are they on receiving it for information? They are. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of questions to staff here. First off, when staff did the municipal scan of what's happening in other municipalities, was there anything that was discovered in regards to like RV parks or campground space or outdoor space for homeless people to go and utilize?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Wolf, no, that question wasn't asked of other municipalities.
Okay. My next question is in regards to the two tables on our page 75 and 76. So table 7 shows recently council approved resources to respond to homelessness. In there are, in the middle of that is 2 homelessness outreach workers. And then on the next page, 76, table 8, potential additional resources to respond to homelessness. There it has, under item number 3, homelessness outreach workers, 2 positions. So a couple of questions, I guess, in regards to this. If approved, and we get the additional 2, what does that take us to, our total numbers? And I have previously asked, and it wasn't confirmed, so I'd like to ask again, are any of these specifically after-hours outreach workers?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Wolf, so table 7 are positions that were previously approved. So those 2 outreach workers were approved with the operating budget for 2024. Should council wish to extend the homelessness response from a city operational perspective, there's the positions that are identified in table 8. The 2 positions, the 2 regular full-time positions that have been previously approved would be regular full-time positions. So those positions would work approximately 35 hours a week, 5 days a week. So usually, and we haven't built out what those schedules look like, but for safety reasons, it is very likely that those 2 positions would work as a pair unless they were working with a bylaw officer at that time. So we still need to discuss that as a staff team. So that what that means is that there's 2 days a week where there would not be outreach workers out in the field.
To follow up then, or also just re-ask, what would that take our total number of outreach workers to? And then I also see in table 8, the first item is a homelessness outreach coordinator, which is a new role. So I'm assuming that coordination would provide some of the outreach workers to work after hours. Is that not correct?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Wolf, so the city does not currently have any outreach workers. So you've approved 2, and there is an option there to approve another 2 part-time work. So that would be 4. So 2 full-time, regular full-time, and 2 regular part-time. Sorry, your second part of the, can you
Does the coordinator result in helping the after-hours component of?
through your worship to Councillor Wolf, the coordinator would help to coordinate the city's response in terms of outreach and working with other agencies that provide outreach services. So there'd be a greater coordination of service that would be provided.
Okay, thanks. And next line of questioning about staffing in these tables as well. During the budget process that we just completed last month, we had the option of adding positions. I believe it was at that time called social development planner, or maybe community social development planner, and there were 2 of them that were to be considered. We did not approve them because I think the response from staff was that they're auxiliary, or not, sorry, that one wasn't auxiliary. I can't remember what happened there. But anyhow, what's potentially in the additional resource table is I think one of those positions is being considered. Is that item number 2? Is that what we were potentially considering in the budget process? But there was 2 recommended, and now there's just 1. And I remember asking during the budget process, why don't you just bring forward 1 planner position?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, in the operating budget, we put forth 2 planner 1s for community social development, and then there was a social development leader. So there was 3 positions. Within the 2 planner 1 positions, there was homelessness responsibilities within those positions. When we were building out this report and looking at the complement of staff to further the city's response to homelessness, it was felt that a planner 1 that actually focused solely on homelessness would be valuable.
Okay, so it is slightly different than what we were considering.
It is a new position.
Gotcha. And the last question I have, I can't remember where it is in here, but there was consideration when we previously approved the temporary modular housing extension at Alderbridge, that Rain City, the management company of that, was going to hold community tables. Do we know anything about them starting that yet?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, prior to that, so to date, staff have had some conversations with Rain City, with BC Housing, and there is a meeting set up early in January for the professionals that provide service to the neighborhood, and they are going to be meeting. Following that, we will then determine what our response is to the neighborhood.
Great, thank you very much.
Before I go to the other speakers, I want to ask a question following on some of that and some of the responses that we've got, and to either you or maybe to the CAO. You say that there's 2 outreach workers that we've recently funded. They will be together and working 35 hours a week. Why can't we have one go with the bylaw officer to spread the effect of them? And secondly, why can't we have them on flexible hours? Because we could surely, when we hire them, we can define what the hours are going to be, so it's not 9 to 5 every day or something.
Through your worship, there will be the option, and we will talk to HR to have the positions as part of the blocking system, which exists. So we will see if that's possible, which then allows for some flexibility within the hours. And there is the potential that outreach worker could be paired up with a bylaw officer. That's something that we need to discuss on what that outreach is going to look like. And we are just in the process of building out the profiles for those positions.
Through your worship, the bylaw enforcement officers and outreach workers have the capability of working together. It changes the nature of the operation. Currently, bylaw enforcement officers have a mandate to conduct an enforcement-related operation and convey a certain message. It can be done, but it would change the nature of that operation. So there is a reason why there's a dedicated outreach component as well, because it's a different type of message that's being delivered.
Well, I would suggest, that argument could be used on the Fox 80 car as well. RCMP, together with a social worker, gives off a different message than just a social worker. It can work. And I would ask the CAO to take a look at that in due course to make sure it can, if it's possible. Councillor Galanders.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just looking for some direction as far as what receiving the report means. Reading the financial, and thank you for this. Thank you for responding to all of this. Thank you for this coming to council in the first place to expand on our homeless response. So the financial impact could be up to $561,000 for this fiscal year, which can be funded by the rate stabilization account. If we decide to expand our response to homelessness as outlined in this report. And the conclusion reads that the pace with which homelessness has increased in the community has exceeded the city's ability to respond. Insufficient resources, both in staffing and in funding, to effectively support this important function have compounded it. These identified resources will complement existing roles and expand and enhance our ability to identify, support, and respond, along with further advocacy to senior levels of government. So if we wanted to implement these things, when do we do that? At a separate meeting or?
No. We can deal with receiving the report. Then, we already know that Councillor Heed is going to make a motion regarding certain aspects. And you can make a motion if you want to have more personnel or something like that.
Okay.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thanks, and through the chair. Well, first, thank you for the report. I think we all appreciate the report, but beyond that, I think it should be acknowledged the amount of work that is being done by staff and being done by the city, not just contained in this report, but as a result of many other strategies and reports. I think the city is actually pulling its weight and doing more than its share. This is a very complex topic, as we all know, but we are also being continually expected to do more and downloaded on by senior levels of government. So I just want to make that comment. I do have a question later on, but we are shouldering more and more. And it's important to point out some of the other reports that we have. It's mentioned in the report, but for the public, the affordable housing strategy from 2018, the homeless strategy from 2019, I revisited those. They're quite complex. The collaborative action plan to reduce poverty in 2021. Those are all very substantial reports and strategies in their own right, and staff is doing a lot of work in relation to those, and it all contributes. Nevertheless, the homeless count went up last year, and we all know that it is a crisis and an issue that we are facing. But all of these things we do have a significant impact on our resources and on our budget, and it is a lot. One question I had from reading the report, though, it talks about the plan in New West. They're doing an innovative plan, and I just wondered, was that 100% funded by the City of New West, or did they receive funding for that, or do we know that?
Through your worship, through your worship to Councillor Hobbs, we don't have those details at this time.
Okay, fair enough. I think the point would be, with funding and support from senior levels of government, there probably are additional things that Richmond could do with funding attached. I just point out to people who are interested in looking at the report that tables 5 and 6 and table 7 actually outline a lot of the things that we are doing. And when you look at those from a city point of view, I think they're quite substantial. And so I appreciate all the work that's gone into those. I support what we're doing. I support receiving the report for information, and I'll look forward to seeing other comments from other members of council. But thank you for this. I just want to make it clear, we are doing a lot of work, and we are putting a lot of resources, people's time and money into it. So thank you for that.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Kind of echo those comments as well. we're doing others' work. Should be done by the province and other groups close by, and they should be putting resources in here. And I think Richmond is stepping up to the plate quite a bit. The one thing I think we can't forget, but these are our people. These are people that are homeless for various reasons, and those of us that have sat down with them and heard their story, you wouldn't do anything else but what we're doing to try to help. I know Councillor Day and I have sat down with a number of from across the street, and you would be there and pitching in yourself. I have some questions though about the direction we're going. When I hear, and I'm not worried about the money, because I think we need to invest in keeping people safe, and that's all people safe. When I hear people will not be working 2 days a week, there'll be no outreach workers, that concerns me. I really feel we need to have 24/7, round the clock. The issues of these people aren't going to take Saturday and Sunday off. They're going to be there Saturday and Sunday, and heaven knows what they want, or Wednesday, Thursday, or whatever. And I think we've got to. I am very concerned about. I'm not the homeless outreach workers. I have no problem. I think our people should be all full-time and committed to working with these clients. And I use the word clients in the psychological sense because they are our clients as well and our people. Some of them are Richmond, would have been Richmond taxpayers. I'm very concerned though, and I think you've told us before, but public would like to know, on page 76, 1 and 2, we are going to see the job description before these people are hired. I have trouble, to be quite frank with you, spending $280,000 for somebody to sit in an office, because that's what that comes across to me as.
That's not part of what's
It's in
on
the
floor.
report.
Those
I'm
are
talking-
potential. Those are potential additional
That's right.
resources.
Well, I'm trying to give my opinion.
Right.
I would like to see our homeless outreach workers, 4 of them full-time. And if we need more after that, we deal with it accordingly. To me, we need a caseworker, and we have to address the issues. When I hear the nature of the operation change, well, what is the nature of the operation? The nature of the operation, in my opinion, is help our human being that are across the street. That's my goal, and I hope it's the goal of everybody else, to help them. And I believe there should be flexible hours. Coming back to his mayor's comment, we need somebody out there all the time. And so with the report that we've got, and we're receiving it for information and hopefully direction, but I think that we need to continue the work that's being done with what's out there, especially the faith communities that have put resources into it and whatever. We need to supplement it, and I hope all of council will support this so that we can get on with it and deal with it as soon as we can, because obviously these people need help. Thank you.
Mr. Erceg, you have some comments?
Mr. Mayor, yeah, just a couple of comments. First of all, we're not recommending or advocating for additional positions. I think that the positions that you approved, the 4 bylaw positions and the 2 outreach workers, that was a big step, and they were approved in the budget. The reality is that to date, we either haven't had those positions, the outreach workers, or we've had to redeploy bylaw staff in order to deal with homeless issues over the last year or 2. So we're not advocating for additional positions, but I want to be realistic. If what you want is 24/7 outreach, you're not going to get it with 2 full-time outreach workers. The hours will be non-standard hours. We have to go through Metro and a process to develop the hours and job specs, but they are not office positions, 8 to 5. They will be non-standard. We will try to stretch the positions as much as we can by coordinating with bylaws, but the 2 positions will not provide, I've heard 24/7, it will not provide 24/7 outreach. Simply, there aren't enough hours in 2 positions to do that. So I think The new position is a good start. We're going to do as much as we can with them. If at some point down the road we think we need more or we have an issue, we would come back to you. But at this point, we're not talking about 24/7 outreach.
Councillor Heed, on the motion on the floor to receive for information.
Yes, on the motion, and I want to use my term that I use, and I know it gets people's back up in the silos. And this goes back to your comment, Mayor, on the lack of coordination. And we've got the vulnerable persons unit with the RCMP. So when I look at Table 7, on which we recently approved, we approved the homeless outreach workers. And Mr. Crowder, I got to tell you, I was kind of concerned when we talked about the fact that we've hired bylaw officers, but we have to have a separate system response to this. And that's very concerning because in my past careers, we wanted to have more of a coordinated effort, whether the coordination was coming from a city resource, a police resource, or a volunteer resource such as some of the organizations that are out there dealing with this. So I guess the point I want to just make here, and I'll let you respond to it, is we've got to coordinate this in a better fashion. We can't operate in our own silos and expect us to have a assertive response to this.
We'll go to our CAO for comment.
Sure. Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Heed and all the members of council. Certainly, the city as a whole works very hard to collaborate across all divisions. I take the comment from Mr. Crotto to mean that the impression of somebody who is experiencing homelessness when approached by a bylaw officer might feel different than when approached by an outreach worker who might not be in uniform. And I think it was simply that. Across all of our divisions, including bylaws, and particularly bylaws, but also parks, public works, and community social development. There is a coordinated team, and you'll see in addition to this report where we listed the positions that have direct responsibility for responding to homelessness in our community, and then B, the long list of positions that also intersect with that, and the team that we have that is coordinating all of that together. So we are working together, we are collaborating across divisions, and certainly we can always do better, and we continue to work towards that, understanding that that is the best outcome for our community and for the people who are experiencing homelessness within it.
All right. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. First of all, thank you to all the people that are working on this. This has got to be one of the hardest jobs in the city, is working with people that are mentally ill or have drug addiction problems. So my hats go off to all those that do go out. Having said that, there are currently outreach workers that go out with, I believe, the churches, Turning Point, and other groups. Do they go out in groups of 2, or do they go out individually?
Do we know that?
Through your worship, I can't answer that question for all agencies. I know from our perspective with the work that we do look at pairing individuals up when responding.
Is that more of a City of Richmond sort of liability thing, or how does that play out?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, it's for safety reasons, and I will turn it over to Mr. Corrado because to speak a bit more to the response.
Thank you.
Through your worship to Councillor Day, so for different agencies such as MSDPR, sort of the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction, they'll typically try to go out on their operations with the Vulnerable Persons Unit with the RCMP. It's designed for safety reasons, precautionary reasons. Sometimes there's multiple people in an encampment. Some of these encampments can be in areas that are difficult to access. So typically municipalities will pair people up.
Okay, well, when we get our outreach workers out there, I think we need to focus on the times of day that they are needed. I mean, I don't think Monday to Friday, 8 to 4 is going to do it. I think it's going to have to be at night. But rather than send them out as a team of 2, given that they are educated in doing outreach work. I would rather see them paired with either security staff, other groups such as the Vulnerable Persons Unit, or maybe a fire or police officer, fire department staff, or with a police officer. I don't think it uses our resources to its fullest by putting them together. I think if we set it up with other groups that, like we do with the Fox 80 car, you've got, a nurse and a police officer. I mean, I think doing it that way, where you've got two different skill sets, is much better use of resources, if at all possible. And other than that, I think that we definitely need to accept this report, endorse it. I hope that all of council will as well. And then we can get to the next level, and let's keep this ball rolling down the field. Thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Yeah, thanks, and through the chair. Just a quick comment on operational deployment issues. That's something that'll be made by staff at the time based on context, based on weather, based on time of day, based on their own policy and procedure. It's quite common to have different deployment models depending on situations, and I think a joint operations team will do that. So I think getting too much into the operational details about how people deploy is not necessary, and it'll be done based on a number of factors and ensure the safety of everybody involved, including the people we're dealing with. Thanks.
Okay, based on that, motion is to receive for information. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Councillor Heed, did you want to go to your motion now?
Thank you, Mayor. And first of all, I'm not going to talk at great length about this.
But, sorry to interrupt, but if you could actually, because the public hasn't seen this motion, it didn't get published.
You cut me off. So, and I'm going to read the motion and then I'll make comment. The motion is that council recognize the urgent need to address the challenges faced by the vulnerable population of those suffering from acute drug addiction and critical mental illness, and to advocate for the province of BC to establish comprehensive and effective measures that ensure their safety, well-being, and recovery. Number two, that council formally adopt the position to have the province of BC define, prioritize, and implement secure care for individuals suffering from acute drug addiction and critical mental illness, and that the mayor write to the premier identifying our position. We all know the prevalence of drug addiction and mental illness has reached alarming levels globally. The lack of secure care facilities treatment exacerbates the risks faced by individuals struggling with these conditions. Insufficient access to secure care facilities leads to overcrowding in hospitals and correctional facilities while perpetuating social order problems in our communities. The distribution of legislative powers clearly identifies education, healthcare, social welfare, transportation, and infrastructure as a provincial responsibility. Allocating funding to establish and operate specialized secure care facilities for drug-addicted and mentally ill individuals is entirely under provincial jurisdiction and should remain under that division of power. Through the establishment of specialized facilities, the province can provide support for recovery and reintegration of individuals into society that extend beyond care, including ongoing treatment, transitional housing, and employment assistance. By prioritizing secure, compassionate care for drug-addicted and mentally ill individuals, we can address the urgent needs of this vulnerable population as we continue to advocate for policies that promote early intervention, prevention, and long-term support.
On your motion, could you also add, besides the Premier, the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions? Right?
Fine.
That person? Okay. So I'll take it that that's a friendly. All right. So that's moved and that's seconded. Councillor Hobbs.
Well, thanks, and through the chair, I'll be speaking in support of the motion. I just want to make a couple comments, kind of based on history and life experience. But the problem that we have now is that a lot of the treatment is voluntary. So for instance, if you have a 13-year-old child who's suffering from mental illness, drug addiction, maybe a combination of both, and they're in voluntary treatment, they can walk out at any time. And the parents really can't control that. So it would be great if we didn't need involuntary care, or, you know, at least that as one of the tools on the tool belt. But, you know, I'll give you a short true story that happened this year. You know, there was a driver driving down the road, flagged over the police, and said, hey, you know, something really strange just happened. I just was asked to drive this person to the middle of a bridge we've all heard of and know well. And the person asked me to drop them off in the middle of the bridge. So the police officer goes, wow, yeah, that does sound strange. And so they go to that bridge and they see the person standing on the bridge, a young man in his mid-20s. And they go up and engage the person in conversation, and the person clearly is thinking about, you know, committing suicide. And so the person is apprehended under the Mental Health Act and taken to the hospital. The person does actually assault the police seriously, but is apprehended without real serious incident at that time, is taken to the hospital under Section 28, and there's a limited time that you can hold people under that. And the person is released within a relatively short period of time, and the person leaves the hospital, and the person goes back to the bridge, and the person jumps off the bridge and kills himself. And so there are thousands of stories like that, similar, different circumstances. My point is this: what we're doing right now isn't working. I heard the Premier talking about this a number of months ago, and I know he got significant pushback. So not everybody will agree with the intent of this motion. But the intent is to do things a little bit differently. We've heard stabbings in Chinatown. We've all heard of different issues. But there are programs that exist elsewhere. I think Alberta has something called the Family Treatment Program. And to have a successful program where somebody has a shot at getting out, and I'm not claiming to be an expert, but I believe you have to have one that's kind of 3 to 6 months. And it can't be something where somebody can just walk out on their own. We've got programs in the Metro Vancouver area, and I know the names of them. I'll leave the names out. Some of them are good programs, but the problem is you can walk out. So you can have a youth or an adult walk out, go buy drugs, go use drugs, maybe even sometimes come back to that facility and use drugs and give them or sell them to other people. So it's not for lack of dedicated staff and dedicated people trying to make a difference. People are. But we've been doing this for a long time, and we don't have the capacity that we need for not everybody, but certainly a cohort of people in this situation that can get the care and the treatment that they need that gives them a shot at actually getting back on a productive path. And when you get on that productive path, and I'm wrapping it up in 30 seconds, Your Worship, when you get back on that productive path and you get into some sort of transitional housing or supportive housing, maybe even independent housing, you can't be in an area like the downtown east side in an SRO where you walk out the door and you're in, and I'll use the term candy store, and I don't mean it in a positive way, where you're literally stepping over somebody who's got a crack pipe in their hand, and you're into that situation where, you know, there's a lot of temptation. It'd be very hard for anybody to succeed in that environment. So transitional housing is all part of it as well. So there are programs out there. They do exist in other parts of the world and in Canada. But part of it has to be, we have to have the ability to actually give people involuntary treatment for drug addiction and mental illness, often a combination of the two. So I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Worship. I think this is a pretty important issue. I know it also says on page 14 of our report, or CNCL 77, that if we wanted to discuss this more with Vancouver Coastal Health, would be happy to present to us at a later date. I do, however, think that there's some urgency into just putting our voice forward. I think about someone with dementia, and they would be put in a locked ward. So if you've ever gone and visited your grandmother or mother or whatever at Rosewood Manor, you have to punch in the key code to get in, get out again, to make sure that it's just you getting out and not grandma or grandpa who's forgetful and ends up on the street or lost or anything else, right? If someone gets hit by a bus in front of City Hall here, and if they get a brain injury, they're going to get scooped up right away and taken to the hospital. But if someone has an OD, and they get their naloxone treatment, they don't necessarily get taken somewhere, and then they don't necessarily get further help, even if they have a brain injury from that overdose. So it seems like we're somehow missing the boat on supporting people who have drug addictions and other things. So we're happy to put grandma in a locked ward, but we're not happy to put somebody else in a locked ward because maybe they have a mental health issue. Well, when does that continuum change? I was downtown one day and this girl was slumped on the street with a needle, and we stopped and we're like, hey, can we take you somewhere? Like, this can't be safe for you because you're physically at risk of being further victimized. So how do we help people the best way we can? And is leaving them on the street the best answer? I don't think it is. So I'm going to support this because I think more needs to be done, and asking for a stronger push, I think, is maybe the best step to get there.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. I just had a question about the last part of the motion, Part 4, where it states that the mayor write to the premier identifying their position. Will that include asking them to operate a specialized secure care facility with, for example, connections to the Ann Vogel Clinic here in Richmond?
I wouldn't take this resolution as being so specific. I think we need to assert the motion is that we are in support of secure care. That's the point. The details and the further network and those kinds of things would be for a later date, a later conversation.
Okay, I wish it was, but okay. Some people are not healthy enough to make intelligent decisions. They're just, struggling so bad with mental health issues or with drug issues. So I do support involuntary care because, as the quote in Councillor Heed's report says, this is from a parent, I have a dead son. Would I have liked to force my child into care without his consent? No. I would have liked his consent, but I would like him alive too. Kind of says it all. It's never our first choice. When I had to put my dad in a care home because he had dementia, it was the last thing in the world I wanted to do, but I had no choice. One night, middle of the night, he wandered out in his underwear in the front of his house, and the postman found him wandering around in snow-covered driveway and ferociously rang the doorbell until my mother woke up and came in and let him in. He wasn't capable of making those kinds of decisions, and so I had to put a lock on that he couldn't open until we could get him into the care facility that he needed. Well, the people that are sleeping in our parks and in our stairwells and dying every single day need that same level of care. So while it's never anybody's first choice, it must happen. When it comes to this motion, I wholeheartedly support it. I wish we had done this a long time ago because I think the province and the feds need to understand that we're done. We need help. And we need it yesterday. Too many people have been lost, and putting the pressure on them is our responsibility as a city council. So I'm happy to support the motion.
Councillor Galanders.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will also support the motion. I want to just address some of the issues that people have with the concept of secure care. I know that the government did announce that they were looking into this, and then they backed off from it because there was some backlash. Because there is the voluntary care part of it, the model where people can become done on their own and seek treatment on their own, make those phone calls. This is speaking just with the substance use disorder, not the mental health, so just with the substance use. When people are ready and they want the help, that obviously is the best scenario. And people do need their freedom to make those choices, and if they want to leave treatment, they can leave treatment. That type of voluntary care is going to stay there. That is still an important part of everything. The people that are going to access voluntary care are people that are able to find it on their own when they're ready. They're not the people that are going to be flagged for the secure care anyway. So where this motion fills the gap, that we really need is for the people that are causing harm to the community, because they are not functioning in society. They're not the attitudes just struggling on the inside and trying to hit bottom, getting to their bottom on their own. They're causing havoc. They're in the system. They're in and out of jail. They're violent or whatever, and they're not able to function safely in society. And the other people where this could be expanded to are like Councillor Lewis said, are people that have been overdosing, people that are so messed up on drugs that they have no ability to get the help even though they want it. And I personally know people that have been in this situation. I recently helped somebody who was on such a high amount of opioids that for so many hours of the day, they are not able to pick up a phone call and get the help they want. And then, when people show up at a hospital, sometimes there's so many complex medical issues that people are going through now with these drugs, like flesh eating issues and staph infections. And I was in the hospital with my friend, and this guy showed up and he wanted help. I mean, he wanted his wounds healed. He wanted to get better. But when you get left in an ER room for a few hours and nobody tends to you, they just leave because now they need the next fix. And they took that step. They want the help, but it wasn't the right type of help. And so it's not to say that people can't eventually leave. It's like, it's just that you are not able to make a good choice. You might be done, you might be ready, but you need someone to make that decision for you. And I think it's going to be very clear which people are going to be in that strain, because they've made themselves public because of the way they're behaving and the state that they're in. So I definitely support the government looking into this more, and I support having a position on it, because we have to have a society that's functioning where people feel safe. Both the community and the people that are struggling, they need help. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just a few comments here. I am in support of this as well. 15 years ago, I visited a very severely locked down ward at Riverview, and to visit a loved one who was harmful to themselves and others, and to know that they were in a place that they were able to get the right drug combination figured out, and 15 years later, they're doing well here in Richmond. They required that time to get the doctors to try things until the right combination worked. So that's just one experience I have with someone in secure care. I know what we're asking for here is a big ask and won't happen overnight. I also would like, whatever happens, and I know it's not necessarily worded in here, but for it to be decentralized, not necessarily Riverview. That had some advantages because they had their own bowling alley, and people who lived there in the care had jobs to do to provide for other people. So there was lots of benefit of having a large set of facilities. But also, if any one of us were to have a loved one that would be in secure care, we don't want to have to travel 2 hours every day to go see them. It really should be in all of our individual municipalities. That was my comments, and then after this, I just have Mr. Mayor, I have a motion I'd like to make as well. Thanks.
Councillor Howe.
Yeah, I certainly want to add my support for the motion. And as for my background as a mental health worker, I fully understand that we need a continuum of service, from prevention, early intervention to voluntary and then mandatory treatment. So I think this is very much needed in our community. However, I can also see that the other side of the argument, saying that, there's no evidence that showing that this kind of secure care centers would work. So, I support the position that we take, and let's wait for the response from the provincial government, whether or not they would support us.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Councillor Heed, thank you very much for bringing this forward. This is long, long overdue. And to be quite frank with you, it's a no-brainer, and I appreciate that. Through your Worship, I'd like to ask Councillor Heed a question, if I may, through you, but Council is already recognizing the need, okay, by having this on the floor. We're already, and by adopting this or supporting this, we're already taking a position, okay? This council, if it is successful. I guess my question, two things, is what do we expect back from the province? And what direction do we expect if we're going to get any? And whether they, and how prompt that they will respond it. And the other thing is, what can we do, given where we are in dealing with the clients we were just talking about in the meantime? And how can we work with our partners within our own community addressing this as well?
So first of all, it's up to the province when they want to respond to the mayor with respect to what's going on here. We'll have to wait and see what's going on. Secondly, I think we're doing a lot, as we've talked about in the homeless situation over the next little while. And I think we're doing whatever we can within our jurisdiction to do that. Again, we're throwing the ball back in the province. And I think with the mayor's letter going to the premier and the ministers, I think, it's certain, clearly, I think we would be, Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the first Metro Vancouver municipalities to have a formal position on this. So I think that's advantageous for us to get out at the forefront of trying to deal with the crisis we're going on. I just want to sum up, and I might as well do it right now, Mayor, is the fact that our overdose rates are increasing, 2,272 last year. We're on path for a record-breaking this year, and all indications are it's going to spike even next year. So I think, us taking the overt position on this is very timely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. I knew that was the answer you were going to give. But, and I'm not going to tell stories. We all have too many stories to tell. As a practicing clinical counselor, I know too well how it does affect everybody from very, very young to very, very old. It is not an issue that is just a certain clientele. This can affect everybody. So good on you, and thank you for bringing it forward.
All right, with that, I'm going to call the question on Councillor Heed's motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? So that is carried. Go back to Councillor Wolf. You had another matter.
Yes, just simply put, based on the discussion that we just had and the two things we've just approved, which is receiving the report for information and then the secure care call. I am going to make the motion that we include the potential additional resources to respond to homelessness on our page 76. So I'd like to move that we have those 4 positions included, and it's all worked out how staff can consider it. If you go on page 78 under financial impact there, the rate stabilization account for 2024, part of it, the additional costs would go to the 2025 budget process. So
Is it seconded? Second. So it's moved and seconded with the money coming out of the rate stabilization account. All right, speaking to that, I'd like some financial information. The rate stabilization account, that's going to be just on our tax draw next year, isn't it? Mr. Chung? You're on. Nope, you're not. There you are.
Your Worship, that's correct. It'll translate based on the amounts in Table 8, approximately a 0.19% tax impact for next year.
All right, and to the CAO, do you recommend these positions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, we would recommend that council sees the impact of the positions that were recently approved, which have not yet been put in place, and that council could consider, based on further reporting from staff, whether these additional positions might be necessary in the short or future term.
Councillor Day.
Okay, so the cost for a homeless outreach worker, a planner for the homeless, and an outreach, and 2 part-time outreach workers, and expansion of the drop-in center, the total cost is $561,000. On the whim last week, we decided to add putting an artificial field over at Brighouse Park, just in the infield. The price on that was $550,000. If we can do that, we can do this. I'll be supporting the motion.
I think given the funding of the field, that is a real stretch. I'm going to ask Mr. Chong, what was the funding source for the field?
Through your worship, I believe the funding was through the revolving fund and part of the special sports reserve. And the field is a one-time amount. This is an ongoing request.
All right. Councillor Galanders.
Thank you, Your Worship. With responding to the comparison.
Sorry. There you go.
Just going to respond to the comparison of this to the baseball field. I think we know we've got different pots of money, and we initially talked about funding the baseball diamond from the rate stabilization as well, but we're able to pull it out of a different fund and some grants as well. And I don't think it's so much that, we did that, we have to do this, but as far as the public goes, people of the public have been sending us emails and making a comparison to, look, you're going to put a baseball infield in to the very park where there's tents. What are you doing for homelessness? But I want people of the public to know, if you look at table 7 on our report here from staff, that this year we approved a $1.1 million ongoing additional cost and a $632,000 one-time additional cost to deal with this. So we're certainly doing a lot, even without this motion put forward by Councillor Wolf. So, the public needs to know that. We're putting a lot into this. At the same time, I don't think that means we shouldn't add these resources because of what it says in the report, that these additional resources, it basically says that they're needed. I mean, I hear the CAO saying it's recommended right now to see how the additional support workers, outreach workers that we just brought on fare, but I don't think that these additional resources would be in the report if they wouldn't, help the situation a lot. Based on what I'm reading, so
All right.
I think that if we can.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I'll be brief. I appreciate the intent and the idea of putting these positions forward, but I did ask for a breakdown in a previous meeting of the specific roles of what these people are doing. And as I was talking earlier, Your Worship, when we're not going to have an outreach worker for 2 days a week out there, I want to know what they're doing. So it's not that I'm against them. It's not the matter of the money. It's the effectiveness of what we're trying to do in the program. And so, to be quite frank with you, I think it's probably a little bit premature till we see the model of what we're going to do. I think we should be funding existing outreach workers that are out there now and putting them on and what have you. And I have no problem with that. But to just put them on the table, and what are they going to do? Let's find out what specifically to do. How can it, and as I asked Councillor Heed, is it going to address part of this, of what we've just passed? And are we going to look at drug intervention? Are we going to have a drug counselor out there as opposed to just an outreach worker? What are we, so to me, I think we have to have the collective program before we go with that, Your Worship. And this can come back at a later date, in my opinion. I think it's a bit premature. It's not the $600,000. I'd like to see the model that we're putting out there with what we've got on page 75. I still don't know exactly what's going to happen out there. And if somebody does know, please let me know, and I'd be more than happy to listen on it.
Councillor Heed.
Yes, I have to agree with Councillor McNulty and with the CAO. With respect to that, we've got 6 positions we're looking at to see what they're going to do. I think we are somewhat premature. I think eventually we will get to where we need to and strategically deploy those particular resources that Councillor Wolf is putting forward. But I think it's a little premature, and I think we've got to be cognizant of that fact. And I would look forward to hearing back from the CAO when they determine whether they can fill those positions and what the actual mandate of those positions would be.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair. I don't think anybody could disagree with the intent being good. I think the more resources that you have working in that area within reason is good. But I agree with Councillor McNulty and Councillor Heed's comments about it being perhaps a little premature. What I'd be looking for is with the new positions that we have approved, the bylaw officers and the outreach workers, I'd like to see what the implementation is of that, what the evaluation is of that, what the analysis is of the effectiveness, and maybe some recommendations coming out of that for either future resources or future personnel. So that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see that done, and then I'd like to see an evaluation process. We can always put more resources into this area. It is an area that probably we could never put too many into, but I think we have to do it in a reasonable way. So I agree that it might be a little bit early to do it.
All right, based on that, I'm going to call the question on. I'm sorry? What? No. No, I already spoke to it. You already spoke to it, yes. Thank you. I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor?
On his motion.
On Councillor Wolf's motion,
sorry.
all those in favor?
Sorry.
Those opposed? So that is defeated with Councillors Al, McNulty, Liu, Hobbs, Heed, and the mayor opposed. I'm sorry?
Can I make a referral to staff? Try to remove a referral on this?
Tell us what it's about.
I'd like to make a referral to staff to look at the positions on our table 8 and come back with what hours and what type of positions these could be that will fill the gap. And maybe come back in a couple of months with a report card of how the outreach that we've recently approved are working, so that they can make a recommendation then based on what everybody was saying.
The direction has been that we want to hear about the positions that have already been approved and funded. And from that, we will get more information. And at that point, we can talk about more if that's the wish of council.
And did we need a referral for that to happen, or is that just happening anyway?
Yeah, but not now.
Okay.
It's coming back.
It's coming back anyway.
Based on the status quo.
Okay.
Of what we've approved.
That's fine.
All right. So we'll carry on with the agenda from the Planning Committee. Councillor McNulty, did you want to introduce that?
Okay, thank you, Worship.
Just a minute. Let's turn it on. Okay.
Thank you, Worship. The application by BC Housing Management Commission for the temporary use permit at 2520, 40, 60, 80, and 2600 and 2640 Smith Street and 9031 Bridgeport Road, that it be considered for a period of 3 years and the application be forward to a January 22nd public hearing for 7 o'clock in the council chambers. So I've moved that.
All right. That's moved and seconded.
And just speak to it, Your Worship. I think for the public hearing, we have information, by the way, I think questions will be asked about the operations and what is actually happening there, and the providers, and we can have all of that, because I think those would be questions of the general public. So I think we should go to public hearing on it and get it forward.
Councillor Day.
Yeah, I was going to make a motion that we table this. Are you saying that there is time between now and the public hearing to get more information on the operator of this facility?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, if this item is advanced, the public hearing would occur in January. There is sufficient time for staff to provide an information memo to council in advance of that public hearing with information that is being requested.
Okay,
Yeah, but we need to make the motion now so it can be properly advertised, right?
Correct.
And in the meantime, we get a memo with more information,
Correct.
right?
okay, so I'm okay with this going forward. I didn't realize it was actually going to public hearing in January. That's great. And so can we guarantee that between now and the public hearing, we'll get a report card on the operator of this temporary housing? Because I've done a little bit of research since I last spoke to council, and I found out that the chef isn't always there, so sometimes there's a lack of food, and that they're supposed to have 3 counselors on staff, there's only 1, and a number of people have been kicked out, and I like to know what's going on and whether they're doing as good of a job as they are over at Rain City, because I understand that it's not the same environment.
Will we get that information?
Yes, Your Worship, we can provide that
Okay,
information to council.
There you are.
Great, thank you so much.
All right. So has that been moved? Moved and seconded. Discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Going to Councillor Day, you've got 2 motions from Public Works and Transportation Committee.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor Brody. This is number 7 on the agenda is try it again. Number 8 on the agenda is the TransLink 2024 cost-sharing funding applications for transportation projects, and that relates to a lot of projects and quite a bit of funding from TransLink.
Okay, so that's moved and seconded. Any comments? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Number 9.
Thank you. Number 9 is the award of a contract 8157Q, supply and delivery of janitorial and cleaning supplies. And again, there were 7 groups that submitted bids, and we brought it down to 3. So very worthwhile spending.
So you're moving that?
Move it. And
Okay, moved and seconded. Comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Brings us to the 5-year financial plan, 2024 to 28. Moved and say, and this really formalizes the taxation report that we approved last month or a few weeks ago anyway, and sends it out 5 years, but of course, there's going to be a great deal of discussion over the 5 years and some adjustments to it, but that's the best view we have at this point. All right, so it's on the floor. Councillor Wolf.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just a question to staff. In this report, it doesn't include the 5-year capital plan by program. I know it's listed under attachment 1, but when we approved the capital plan, there were items that were included, but they were insufficient funding for this year or this next year of spending, but they were still included within the next 5 years. The 2 that I was looking for were the habitat enhancements at the Nature Park and at Terra Nova, and so neither of them are included in here. Could staff just clarify where that would go?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, the projects that are included here are only funded items. So the ones that are not funded is not included in the 5-year financial plan bylaw.
And then a follow-up, but some of the items in here are not listed for any funding use in the next year, just like those ones, like for example, roads network, phase 2 is the 700,000 is meant to be 2025. So I just don't get why some things that were insufficient funding are still not factored in here, because it's like they're lost now.
Which item are you referring?
Well, just anything on the 5-year capital plan by program that doesn't have any money to be spent in 2024. So if you look on page 27, all the Lulu Island Park ones are later on. But why are not the items that are going to cost money? Like when I asked a question earlier about the Terra Nova area, they said, oh, well, then when the dike work happens there in 2027, that's when the funding will be needed. So where do those go? Yeah.
Mr. Chong?
Yeah, I can answer that too. Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, the 5-year plan is a formality that we submit in compliance with the charter, but the annual plan will be brought forward as it's revised each year. So come 2025, when we bring forward the 5-year plan, or 2026 or 7, when the project is more, I guess, project ready or scope ready, then that'll be brought to council for endorsement and approval.
So then just to follow up, so that next annual budget, it won't be based on this necessarily, it'll be based on that previous process that included the insufficient funding items.
The 2025 plan is a living document, and based on council's decisions and endorsements and strategic plans, it'll be updated to reflect that. So it's always updated annually.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. And just for the public that didn't get to read these hundreds and hundreds of pages of report, this will result in a 5.62% tax increase on properties. And just so you know, 39 cents of each dollar goes towards fire and police. So those dollars are well spent. If anybody's bought a head of cauliflower or a box of cereal lately, those prices have almost doubled. So I think this is a very modest tax increase, so I will be supporting it.
Okay, with that, we're going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Brings us to public announcements. First of all, from our closed council meeting, we have some committee appointments. These all go to December 31st, 2025. For the Sister City Advisory Committee, Jaron Gill, Sue Tian, Melissa Zhang, Teresa Mo Chen, Andy Chung, Qin Ji, Yvonne Lai, and Jordan Oy. And to the Public Art Advisory Committee, Sabrina Bojani, Bronwyn Bailey, Sari Chong, Paul Dufour, and Allison Liu. More generally, Jesus, Siri's talking to me, sorry. Yeah, right. Well, I thought it was. More generally, the Stevenson streetscape engagement, the city is seeking input on the look and design of the Stevenson area. Residents and others are invited to provide feedback on street furniture, pedestrian spaces, parking, cycling, and other active transportation infrastructure in one of Richmond's best-known communities. So if you want details of that, go to letstalkrichmond.ca. Then on Christmas Eve, we have the Santa Claus Parade in Steveston. And obviously, there's a special visitor from the North Pole. This is supported by the Richmond Fire Rescue and organized by community members. The parade will feature a number of Richmond Fire Rescue vehicles and off-duty members collecting donations for the food bank and for the Firefighters Charitable Society. Of course, Santa Claus is expected to join the fun, so the parade begins at Regent Street and 4th at 6 p.m. on Saturday and concludes at 8 p.m. at Gary Point Park. Everybody is welcome. It's something for the entire family. Then there's lots of activities during the winter break. There's many activities right across Richmond. Between the 23rd and January 7th, we encourage you to enjoy the creative festive light displays in Steveston Village, the City Hall Plaza, Britannia Shipyards, and other areas of the city. There's also Winter Wonderland public skating at Minoru Arenas and much more. Over at the Gateway Theatre, you'll find that they have a Christmas musical as usual, and it's Cinderella this year, which is open to great reviews. So if you want more information on all of that, go to richmond.ca. Now, just a reminder, the City Hall will be closed for the holiday season from the end of the day this Friday, December 22nd. We'll reopen Tuesday, January 2nd. Community centers and libraries remain open over the holidays, and a number of city services can be accessed online by way of the website or myrichmond.app. Our next meeting of council is in 2024. We have a general purposes committee meeting on Monday, January 8th at 4 p.m. And the next scheduled council meeting is on the 15th. So on behalf of myself, council, and the city, I wish everybody a very happy holiday. I hope you have a very safe and happy and healthy, prosperous time as we kick back and get a little bit of rest and relaxation. I hope you can join everybody on that one and come out in the new year because we have plenty to do. With that, we'll go to bylaws for adoption.
Move the two bylaws.
So it's moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor, opposed, carried. And on development permit panel?
Thank you, Your Worship. There are two recommendations. Recommendation 1, that the minutes and chair's report of the Development Permit Panel meeting held on December 13th, 2023 be received for information, and that the recommendations of the panel to authorize the issuance of a development permit, which would permit the construction of a 3-story, 25-unit affordable rental housing building at 4831 Steveston Highway on a site-zoned low-rise rental apartment, and vary the provisions of Richmond zoning bylaw to allow 37% of the required vehicle parking spaces to be small car spaces, be endorsed, and the permit so issued.
Move the recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. We are now adjourned.